Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. Happy 2025. Well, we hope it's a little bit better than 2024. Let's review a bit of what has happened already. Unlike the Republicans, Democrats managed the peaceful transfer of power without a hitch, with dignity, with the proper seriousness the occasion deserves. And I have to hand it to Vice President Kamala Harris. The dignity she displayed, the self-restraint, was really a model. And we sometimes we should deplore the bad behavior of politicians. But when they behave admirably and when they set an example for our children, we really should underscore that they've done the right thing. And she certainly did. Now, I have a certain bone to pick with the president, and that concerns, frankly, the op-ed he wrote for the Washington Post, which I currently work for. He implored us to remember January 6th. So far, so good. He reminded us that this was an abomination, a violation of the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power. He talked about the mob. He talked about democracy prevailing. You know, the only thing he missed was President Trump. Amazingly, the entire thing was written in passive voice, as if the mob had assembled itself, as if the mob had called itself, as if the mob had been sent up to the Capitol itself, as if the mob had initiated a call to hang Mike Pence. All of this omits the central role of Trump and the central role of the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. Why bother doing this if you're going to exempt the people responsible for this heinous behavior? Well, I have a couple theories. One is that Biden doesn't understand the difference between respecting the institution of the presidency, that is the incoming presidency, and the obligation to respect his victory, and the obligation that sometimes comes with that to also be completely candid, honest, and not cover up for your successes' errors, whether they were in the past, the future, or the present. And in this effort to bend over backwards to treat Trump in a way he was not treated, he winds up enabling him, covering him, normalizing him. It was really pathetic. And I use that word advisedly because that is the single adjective that I heard over and over again from Democrats, from Democratic activists. Pathetic. Why even bother? And I think we get down to the central dilemma of the Biden presidency. On one hand, he was absolutely the right person to manage the country coming out of COVID, coming out of a recession. He was able to push through a really impressive array of legislation. But he missed, I think, and part of this is age, part of this is generation, part of this is his breeding in the Senate. He missed the central challenge, which is to bring a knife to the knife fight, which is to use every weapon available in the arsenal of the bully pulpit to inform and remind people of who Trump is and what the message is that Trump is trying to convey, which is fundamentally anti-democratic, anti-American. And so he winds up defending some peculiar sort of 19th century sense of cordiality, of comedy. And in the midst of an effort that we are all struggling with to remind people of the truth of January 6th, he actually makes things worse. And that makes me sad. It disappoints me. And once again, it leaves me wondering, had he stepped away, as he suggested he would during the campaign after a single term, given Kamala Harris a full primary and others a full primary, whether we would not now be facing the return of Donald Trump, which is a national tragedy. And I guess that's where we come back to. And over a week, a little over a week and a half, we're going to see Donald Trump take the oath of office, which means nothing to him, and resume the presidency. We already know what he's got up his sleeve. He wants massive tax cuts for the rich. He is not going to be able to in any way pay for this. So he's going to try to either fudge the numbers in a way that is laughable and gives the markets the creeps because we can no longer trust the accounting and the data coming out of the government, or he's going to start cutting things that he promised he wouldn't cut, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I don't know which he's going to do, but it's going to be bad. And it's going to reinforce the message that Democrats have to make, which is Republicans are the party of the billionaires and the big corporations who are now bending over backwards trying to please him. Democrats are the party of the little people, the ordinary people, the average American. And Democrats have to make that message clear every single day, whether it's on healthcare, education, the budget, tariffs, which if Trump passes them are going to disproportionately impact middle class and working class people on everything they buy, or whether it's on mass deportations, which of course are not only going to affect the people who are deported, but the businesses, the farms, the communities in which these people have lived peacefully and frankly, lawfully, aside from their entry into the United States for, in some cases, decades. So Democrats are going to have their work cut out for them. I will say this. In the House, Democrats did something smart last time around. They made a generational change. We have Hakeem Jeffries, we have Pete Aguilar, we have Catherine Clark, people who are of a new generation who are very good at messaging, particularly the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. And they have avoided this kind of paralysis that happens when you have the same people in power decade after decade. I regret to say that the Senate has not made the same choice. And in fact, they, in one case, as I wrote today in the Washington Post, this is Tuesday, a disastrous choice in putting Senator Dick Durbin back in the chairman's seat, which is now going to be the ranking minority seat of the Judiciary Committee. He's entirely ill-equipped. He was Mr. Conciliatory. He was Mr. Comedy, comedy with a C-O-M-I-T-Y, although it was sadly comedic at times. He did not press every single nominee through. He did not demand that the subpoena be issued to, frankly, the Chief Justice, who refused to show up to his hearing. He did not join in the demand for a criminal referral of the Justice Thomas. He was not the right person for the right time. And he really will not be the right person at the right time to lead hearings on Kash Patel, on Pam Bondi, on the rest of the crew that Trump is going to nominate, let alone the judges that are going to come before them. So I remain disappointed that Democrats haven't seen fit not only to change their committee, their conference leadership, that is the minority leader, the whip, and the rest, but also some of these committee ranking members who will now have the responsibility for running interference, for trying to stop this Trump train, which is going to go off the tracks, we know. So what do we do in the upcoming year? Well, I think there are several things we can all do. One is we do not get the luxury of exhaustion. I'm sorry. Yes, we were tired at the end of the year. You had your holiday. Get back in the game. Democracy is not voluntary. If we want a democracy, if we want to maintain our basic fundamental freedoms, we want to maintain an inclusive society, we have to work for it. Our leaders are not up to the task. We saw that with Biden. We've seen that with Dick Durbin. We've seen this time and time again. It's us. We are the people who are going to have to combat the MAGA scourge over and over again. We're the ones who are going to have to sound the alarm, are going to have to push lawmakers to object and to block initiatives. We're the ones who are going to have to encourage state and local officials to fill the gap. It's not going to be anybody else. And frankly, there are many, many groups in this country, most especially African Americans, who have never had the luxury of giving up on America. And despite the vile treatment that they have received over decades, over centuries, they have not given up on this country. And none of us have the luxury of doing so. So I think we need to rouse ourselves. We need to sturdy ourselves for the task ahead, and we need to re-engage. Now, my second piece of advice would be you have to be selective in the way you engage. I do not think scrolling through X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it is productive. I don't think it's worthwhile to watch hours or even an hour of cable TV news. It's not productive, it's annoying, and it's not informative. It is not helping you to become an advocate for democracy. I would be much more selective in the media you watch and hear. I would make an effort to pay attention to original sources like C-SPAN. I would go to events that are in your area. And I would look for actual data rather than people talking about the data. One of the problems we had, of course, with the economic message was the press reported on what people thought about the economy, which was highly negative, rather than the economy itself. So we have to do a little work. We have to do some homework. And we have to seek out those good news sources that have responsible commentary, that actually do the hard work of reporting facts. And you're going to have to be much more selective, I think, than in the past. And there are good publications out there. I would point to the Philadelphia Inquirer. I would point to the Atlantic. I would point to the folks at the Bulwark. There are many good sources of information and expertise. There are also think tanks like Brookings, for example, which has all sorts of public papers, public discussions, experts. And these are the sources you're going to have to seek out in order to keep yourself informed and bat down the disinformation. In that same vein, I implore you, find a local newspaper to support. It is vital to have good local news. It's vital to have nonprofit news. So send a few bucks each month if you canceled a subscription to some mainstream outlet, and send it to ProPublica or send it to a local paper. And I think you will find that your money is well spent. We have to be able to have the facts in order to have the best possible democracy we can. And lastly, find those groups that really speak up for your values. It might be the ACLU. It might be Protect Democracy. It might be Planned Parenthood. It might be a specific campaign. We have great candidates running in Virginia and New Jersey next year for governor. Sign up with one of them. Donate your time. Find a group that channels your values. And if you do those three things, that is to limit and redirect your news consumption, to support better outlets for news, and to support groups, campaigns that speak to your values, then I think you'll be doing something that actually moves the ball forward. You're not going to be able to change the world. I'm not going to be able to change the world in one day, but every day you should think about one thing you can do to promote democracy, to promote literacy in media, to reach out to neighbors, to make your community a little bit more functional. We're going to have a very long road ahead, but the good news is there really is a community of people, nearly 50% of the electorate. And frankly, if you count people who didn't even bother to vote, more than 50% of the country is with us. And those are the people we're going to have to engage. Those are the people we're going to have to reach out to. And we're going to have to figure out what message and what messengers is effective for re-engaging them. "2025 is here, and it's time to commit to our resolutions. Like many of you, staying on top of my finances is one of my biggest goals for the year ahead. Fortunately, Acorns makes it easy. Most resolutions take a lot of willpower and planning, but Acorns make it possible to start saving and investing automatically. That way, you can feel confident knowing that you're creating a financially freer future. You don't need to feel like financial wellness is impossible. Acorns gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track. Basically, Acorns does the hard part so you can give your money a chance to grow. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing so your money has a chance to grow for you your kids, and your retirement. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich either. Acorn lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can start with $5 or even just your spare change. That's so important. I think it was Ben Franklin who said, money makes money, and the money that makes money. Well, think about that. So listen to Ben and Jen. The sooner you get started, the better. That's why Acorns gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money back on track. And you can create your Acorns account and start investing in just 5 minutes. Like me and so many others, you'll start seeing the difference in your account balances in no time. Financial wellness is possible. Acorns does the hard part so you can give your money a chance to grow. Head to acorns.com/greenroom or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Again, that's acorns.com/greenroom. You can find the link in the show notes. Paid client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/greenroom. I thought we would start off the new year with some questions from all of you. After all, we all have a lot of questions about 2025, and I thought this would be a good way to launch us into the new year. So let me dive right in. We have Kate from Pasadena who asks what I thought of Lex Fridman's interview of Zelensky. Can he use flattery to get Trump's support? I absolutely think that there is going to be an international contest of flattery and all kinds of stunts and antics to make Trump feel good about himself. This is the Trump self-esteem train. This was Macron inviting him to the reopening of Notre Dame. This is going to be every potentate coming up with awards, coming up with ceremonies, flattering him. Do I find this obnoxious and distasteful? Yes, but put yourself in the position of a small democratic country. Donald Trump can do a lot of harm. He can enact tariffs. He can withdraw aid. He can make your diplomatic life miserable. He can do all sorts of things because he's a bully, and he will. So if you're the leader of a small Scandinavian country, a small Eastern European country, small South American country, wherever it is, what are you going to do? Your obligation is to your own country to preserve their freedom, their economic stability, their diplomatic wherewithal. So of course you're going to do these things. And so you're going to have to get ready for this never-ending flow of compliments, ceremonies. It's going to be stomach-turning. But I don't blame them. After all, these people have to survive. And you're going to see it, unfortunately, from both distasteful people as well as our allies. You're going to see a lot of it from Israel. They're probably going to hold out for any kind of possible hostage deal until Trump takes office so they can present it to Trump, who they will nominate for a Nobel Peace Prize and more. So buckle up. That's going to be the way of the world. And the real question is how much damage Trump does. I would really recommend don't pay attention to what people say or even what Trump says. Pay attention to what they do and what they get Trump to do for them. So if he is successful in manipulating the American public, wait for foreign leaders to manipulate him, and perhaps it'll all come out in the wash. So next question. We have Mark in Chicago. What's the current status of Trump's cabinet nominations? Is there any chance of stopping any of them? Well, only one of them has been dumped before he got started, and that was Matt Gaetz. The others are going to be coming up for their hearings beginning this week, actually, and going into the weeks that follow. The most obnoxious of these, the most dangerous of these, in my mind, are Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth. And that's because they're in important, if they get confirmed, national security roles. It's not like Department of Commerce all respect to the Department of Commerce or the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Those departments demand good management, but there are also lots of stopgaps, and there are states and localities that overlap with the functions of some of those departments. So if HUD does nothing for the next 4 years, states, localities, the private sector can fill in and work on housing discrimination, do all sorts of things. But there's no substitute for the U.S. military. There's no substitute for the intelligence community. There's no backstop. So if these people screw up, and they will, we will be, unfortunately, very vulnerable. And just think about this. You are a European country. Are you going to share intelligence with Tulsi Gabbard? I sure wouldn't. It's going to go right to Putin. Are you going to coordinate whatever military action you have with Pete Hegseth, who knows nothing about strategy, knows nothing about diplomacy? Of course not. So I would hope that Democrats are able to unify against these people and maybe put some pressure on people who fancy themselves as foreign policy hawks to nix one or hopefully both of these people. Now, the other obvious bad egg in all of this is RFK Jr., who has been nominated for HHS. He is a vaccine denier. He's a nut. He himself has been a drug addict and has had a slew of personal scandals. He's utterly unfit and unprepared to handle a large agency that depends upon scientific expertise, that depends upon good judgment, that depends upon coordination with many other branches of the government and many other agencies. He's totally unqualified. And I think there is a chance that he may be knocked down. Frankly, a lot of people in the so-called pro-life movement, I refer to them as the forced birth movement, don't like him either, because he's been at least ostensibly pro-choice in some regard. So maybe there are some Republicans who can get riled up against him as well. But I would say this to my Democratic friends in the Senate, and that is, even if you can't defeat these people, you have to grill them. You have to reveal them to be incompetent, untrustworthy. You have to begin to undermine the administration from the get-go. You can't pretend that these people are qualified when they're not. You cannot give Trump the benefit of the doubt. You have to put people on full alert, and you have to impress upon people, frankly, what a bad decision they made in electing Donald Trump and this troop of crazies and incompetents and boobs that will follow him into office. So there are times when you don't want to raise a fight because losing the fight is disastrous. This is not one of these times. You should fight on every single one of them, dig up as much dirt as possible, sully them as much as you can. Maybe Trump will get disenchanted with them. He won't like how they fare on TV, and he'll get tired of them and get rid of them. That would be a good thing. So fight the really bad ones. There are some who are simply mediocre and I'm indifferent to. But on these really bad ones, they really should fight really, really hard. So let's go to the next one. We have from Tampa, Florida, Jessica. How is Elon Musk's foray into European politics affecting our alliances? What he's doing legal, and is there any way to stop him? Well, if you haven't been keeping up, he's been on a roll. He's been out there showing support for the fascists in Germany. He's been out there making trouble for very admirable, very well-meaning members of parliament and the government in the UK. It is totally inappropriate. He does not have the standing to negotiate on behalf of the United States. Not only his party not yet in power, but he has no official role. He's just Elon Musk. But let's face it, the Logan Act, which is the law that prohibits people from doing diplomacy on their own, is very rarely enforced. It may not even be constitutional. So he can run around the world making a lot of trouble. But frankly, Democrats make a mistake in being quiet about it. They should be just as loud. They should be just as, frankly, dogmatic about, first of all, the inappropriateness of an American administration or soon to be administration in mucking around in the politics of other countries. And secondly, the damage he is doing is to undermine people who are pro democracy, pro women's rights, who share our values, because he's against our values. And we should make clear that this guy who, frankly, we took in as an immigrant from South America, who has made billions on American shore, does not represent the United States. And in fact, his values are antithetical to ours. So there's not much we can do about it, but we sure can protest. And I would like Democrats to be a lot louder and a lot more vocal and articulate about the damage he is doing, and to make clear that neither he nor Trump really understand America's proper role in the world, which is the indispensable nation, the nation that is the leading economic, political, and military power, that keeps the peace, that keeps democracies together, that prevents totalitarians from invading their neighbors as we do in Ukraine, and who really has an obligation to conduct themselves with some modicum of decency, of honor. And those words, of course, are anathema to this crew. So I share your disdain and disgust at what Elon Musk is doing, but sadly, there's not a lot we can do about it other than criticize, and we should be criticizing him very loudly. Let's go on. Antonio from Nashville asked, does the H-1B issue have the potential to divide corporate Republicans and the tech right from the MAGA base? Will it slow down Trump's war on immigration? This is a great question. Trump is caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, his most consistent issue, more than, I think, abortion, more than foreign policy, has been xenophobia, hatred of immigrants, the notion that we are facing the great replacement, and on and on and on. That is why millions of MAGA folks voted for him. He is channeling their prejudice, their hatred. He is playing to their economic fears, and it has gotten him elected now twice. Problem, people like Elon Musk and the other people who helped get him elected by giving him millions, tens of millions, in Musk's case, hundreds of millions of dollars, take a different view, because being part of the tech world, they know that we need the talents of people from all over the world. And of course, it's smart for us to get people from all over the world to work for us rather than work for competitors. They add value to America. They add productivity. They employ other Americans. There's a whole host of cultural, social, economic reasons why we want them. So what does Trump do with this? He's said two things to two different groups of people. Imagine that. He's made conflicting promises. This is going to be a theme, by the way, coming up as he tries to wriggle out of promises to one group or mollify another group. And it absolutely does have the capacity to paralyze and to create some infighting. And what Donald Trump, I think, is going to try to do is kind of wheedle and needle and give enough to the anti-immigration folks by rounding up a few thousand criminals, declaring the immigration problem solved, and then allowing his tech billionaires to continue to hire foreign labor. Now, there's a wrinkle here. When people speak about the H-1B visa, they normally refer to the part of that law that allows you to bring in highly skilled workers. That would be programmers, researchers, people with advanced degrees. But Donald Trump, businessman, uses a different part of that law, and that's to import the lowest level of labor, unskilled people. I hate to use that word because everyone has some level of skill, but maids, gardeners, all the people he employs at his facilities. That's right. He is hiring people because he apparently believes there are jobs that Americans won't do. Yes, he is the biggest hypocrite out there when it comes to immigration and hiring people. And he has done it from day one. He works in the construction industry as a developer. There's a high percentage of illegal immigrants who work in that field. There are a high percentage of illegal immigrants who work in agriculture, which, by the way, is largely in red states. So he's going to have to make a choice what he does. And hopefully he will wind up solving and satisfying no one's concerns. And Democrats should exploit that. They should be very clear that he has let down his supporters, that he is not solving the illegal immigration problem. And they should also point out, frankly, that Trump, the businessman, should be hiring American workers, should be hiring domestically. And he chooses to go to South and Central America to hire maids and butlers and all the rest of it. So I think there is reason and opportunity to make hay. Although they will not control the gavel, there are hearings, and at the various hearings, whether it's for Homeland Security, whether it's for national security positions, Democrats should raise these issues again and again and make clear to Trump supporters that he's not giving them what they asked for. And what's more, he may be making some of these problems a lot worse and maybe having really very adverse effects downstream. If he starts deporting large numbers of people and he cuts off H-1B visas, the tech people are going to be upset, ag is going to be upset, construction is going to be upset, and he's going to have to pay some kind of political price for that. Between global warming and rising energy bills, finding the right temperature at night is a struggle we all face. It can make it so hard to fall asleep. But recently, I found a way to sleep in perfect comfort all night long. Whether you sleep too hot or even too cold, my secret is using thermoregulating, NASA-inspired, silver-infused bed sheets by Miracle Made. Their self-cleaning antibacterial bedding even prevents 99.7% of bacteria. So they stay fresher 3 times longer. That means 3 times less laundry, too. Thanks to Miracle Made, you'll stop sleeping on bacteria that can clog your pores and lead to breakouts and acne. They even eliminate bad odors, so your bed always feels freshly made. Life is much more comfortable and clean with Miracle. Their temperature-regulating, silver-infused fabrics were inspired by NASA to give you maximum comfort no matter how high the heater is set. Just picture how great it will be to get a better night's sleep every night. Plus, Miracle sheets feel soft and luxurious without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They feel even nicer than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So you can feel like you're on vacation every time you get into bed. I imagine I'm in Greece or maybe Southern California. So ask yourself, what part of dreamland will Miracle take you to? Miracle has a whole line of comfortable, self-cleaning bedding, pillowcases, and comforters. I know you'll love them. Upgrade your sleep this year. So how do you get it? Go to trymiracle.com/greenroom to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo Green Room at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Remember, go to trymiracle.com/greenroom and use the code GREENROOM to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40%. Again, that's trymiracle.com/greenroom to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. The link is in the show notes. Tyler in Austin, Texas. What's the status of Trump's legal cases? Do you think he'll be forced to face any accountability? Well, that is the sad, sad reality that for now, he faces no liability in the January 6th case, in the Florida case involving the documents, and in the Atlanta case, which is sort of a state version of the January 6th case. The only place where he has actually gotten tried gotten convicted, and unless something really remarkable happens by Friday, he will be sentenced, is in New York. And this is the case in which he essentially defrauded the voters, lied to them, dummied up documents, created false documents in order to hide his affairs with various women, including a porn star. That's the only case that has gone to trial. And let me tell you, Alvin Bragg, who's the DA in New York, got a lot of flack for doing this. He was criticized. How can you bring such a small case? Aren't there bigger cases? Why don't you let the feds go first? Well, thank God at least somebody held him accountable for something. Now, the judge in a ruling earlier this week indicated that he will not impose, or is not likely to impose, any kind of prison sentence. I get that. And he's a first-time offender, and he's about to be president of the United States. But the way he phrased it, it also appears that he's not going to really give him any punishment. That would include something like a fine. That would include probation. Now, there's going to be a hearing, and maybe he will change his mind. But essentially, he's going to simply get convicted and then released. That's not very satisfying, is it? The ordinary person, even a first-time offender, would face some jail time or at least probation. Trump gets nothing. And this is part of the problem, that Trump has proved that, in fact, we don't have one standard of law for everybody. We have a standard of law for everybody else, and then one for ex-presidents, presidents-elect, current presidents. That is not how our system was set up, but thanks to Donald Trump and the Supreme Court, that is the system that we have. So I think on balance, it's better than a poke in the eye. It's better than nothing. We do want him to be a sentenced felon. And the telltale sign is how furious he is about the ruling and how desperate he is to stop this hearing. He doesn't want to be a sentenced felon because somewhere in his lizard brain, he understands that this is shameful, that this will set him apart from every other president in the history of the United States. So I have a rule of thumb, and that is if he's upset about something, I'm pleased about it. And I am pleased about this. So kudos to Judge Merchan, who's the presiding judge. Kudos to Alvin Bragg and to that jury that listened to the evidence and applied the law, convicted him. And remember, this is not Alvin Bragg's verdict. This is a verdict from a jury of Trump's peers, New Yorkers, ordinary Americans. So kudos to those 12 people. Let's go to our next question. This is from Alicia in Washington, D.C. With Trump able to saturate the media landscape with the power of the bully pulpit, what's the best way for Democrats to get their messaging out? Wow, that is, I think, the biggest challenge Democrats face. Listen, they are right now having a competition for the head of the Democrat National Committee. And they have a bunch of regular hackish politicians. And then they have a guy named Ben Wickler. Ben Wickler, who listeners of this program will remember, is the state chairman of Wisconsin. He is a brilliant organizer. He is a brilliant communicator. He understands that you don't change minds by going on Meet the Press. You change minds by going to and speaking on platforms that ordinary Americans frequent, even Americans who do not consider themselves to be political. He himself was a podcaster. He helped write Al Franken's book. He helped communicate in, I think, the most exemplary fashion for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin for several years now. He gets this. He knows that you have to go everywhere, be everywhere. You have to go on podcasts. You have to go on social media. You have to give access to those people who are going to reach readers, viewers that, frankly, are not listening to the mainstream networks or subscribing to the New York Times. So I think step one is hiring a chairman who understands that. And secondly is I think he's got to take them to school. He and someone like Pete Buttigieg, who actually does go on Fox News, does go on these alternate platforms, needs to literally run classes for Democrats, help them get to be media prepared, media savvy, and to pound away day after day, hour after hour, the way the right wing does. Democrats do not have a captive media the way the right does. Whatever they want Fox to say or not to say to conceal, Fox does. Same thing with a whole flood of these websites. Democrats don't operate that. You only need to look at the way the New York Times covered this election and the Biden economy to understand that in many instances, they're much tougher on Democrats than they are on Republicans. So Democrats have got to get out of the habit of simply relying on the mainstream media to get the message out, to get the facts out. They have to do that themselves, and they're going to have their own platforms, their own podcasts, their own social media setups, and they're going to have to discover those people who are talking to a larger audience. And I think if they do that, they do it consistently, they can at least make up some ground. And I think the other thing they're going to have to do is really start working the refs the way the right wing does. The mainstream media, mainstream newspapers are incredibly sensitive to the accusation that they have been guilty of liberal bias. So they bend over backwards not to cover Trump the way they should. They bend over backwards to create a false equivalence between Trump and Biden or Trump and the Democrats. Democrats have to react with the same fervor, the same outrage when the mainstream media doesn't cover the Trump scandals, doesn't properly cover the Democrats' position, when they use euphemisms like Congress rather than the House, which is controlled by Democrats, when they talk about Washington, when they talk about gridlock. Who is responsible for these things? These are not floating phenomenon in the ether. These are phenomena that are the result of a Republican Party that is dysfunctional, that is anti-government, that is nihilistic in many respects, and they should be calling them out for what they are. And Democrats have to, when they do go on these platforms, make that case. They have to complain. They have to write in response to biased pieces. They have to set the record straight. So it's not going to be easy. It doesn't come naturally to them, but they're going to have to do it. And God willing, Ben Wickler will be elected as chairman of the DNC and set the example for the rest of them. So we come to the end of our time together today with one last question, and it's a big one. Jane in Sea Ranch, California asks, will AG, Attorney General Garland, release the Smith report? Well, there's actually a couple Smith reports because, as you know, the special counsel was appointed both for the Mar-a-Lago case and for the January 6th case. Just today, on Tuesday, oh, big surprise, Eileen Cannon has held up the release of any special counsel report in her courtroom, in the case before her. Frankly, I don't even think she has jurisdiction over this. The case is on appeal right now on other issues with the 11th Circuit. She has no business blocking a government report anyway, and the whole thing is preposterous. And here's a situation, by the way, where Joe Biden and Merrick Garland should get their friggin' act together. They should release the report. I don't care what Judge Cannon says. Who's going to claim that he's done something wrong? Who's going to prosecute him? After all, he's got immunity. Just go ahead and release the damn thing. And by the way, why has it taken so long? Why do these people always operate at half speed or no speed at all? Frankly, the January 6th report should have been out weeks ago. And instead, we run up to the very deadline, the very end of the administration, with the potential that some other judge may block both of these, both the January 6th and the Mar-a-Lago report. And that's an outrage. And that brings us back, and maybe the questioner was hinting at this, to why the hell is Merrick Garland so slow? Why did he wait so long to prosecute these cases? Why did it take him so long to make the decision to actually prosecute in the Mar-a-Lago case? Why has he been so slow on these reports? Why, frankly, did he muck around with a special counsel for Biden who spoke out of turn and, of course, found no wrongdoing with the retention accidental retention of classified documents from his time in the Obama administration. What is wrong with him? And the answer is he's a judge. He was always a judge. He doesn't operate like a prosecutor, doesn't think like a prosecutor, has continually underestimated Trump, has thought that if they just play by the Marcus Queensberry rules, then everything will be fine and they will earn respect and the Justice Department will be enamored among the American people. And this was wrong. He was the wrong person. Biden made a mistake selecting him. He should have gotten rid of him, frankly, earlier on, once it was evident that he wasn't doing his job. And the result has been the most lackluster Democratic Attorney General I can remember. And given the stakes, he's arguably the worst Attorney General, including someone like John Mitchell, who actually broke the law and did wrongdoing. And that's because the stakes were so high. His obligation was so great, and he failed to meet the moment. He let the prosecution of Donald Trump slip through his fingers. And Supreme Court or not, we would have had an opportunity to see him, I believe, tried had Merrick Garland gotten on the stick early on. But he didn't. And now the verdict of history will not treat him kindly. And we will unfortunately see the new president of the United States enter office having been convicted of only one crime, essentially. 34 counts, but one crime, and that's the New York criminal case, the hush money case. So once more, thank goodness for Alvin Bragg. And think if history had been different, if Sally Yates, Doug Jones, a bunch of other prosecutors you can think of had been Attorney General, would we be here? Or would Trump have been convicted a year or so ago and never nominated for the presidency, let alone win the presidency again? Wow, that's food for thought. So thank you for your questions. Great questions all. And I will look forward to hearing more from you during the new year. Please send in your comments or questions. I want to hear from you. And we will be back next week with guests throughout the year. So if you enjoy this program, you enjoy our other programs, please tell your friends, families, colleagues. They can find us wherever they get their podcasts. Bye-bye.